Hello, English 1101. I am doing this overview of the guidelines and rubric for the personal narrative, which is the first major assignment for 1101 due to missing class on Thursday. So this is what I would have done in class and what I did with the other section on Tuesday. I will go over this. It'll be right at 15 minutes max, and if you have any questions, just email me or ask me in class. For the personal narrative, this is about telling a story, a true story. It's a creative nonfiction piece. The key word is nonfiction. So this is not writing a story that you dream of, or you're not writing a novel here. You're writing a true story, something that's happened in your life, creative nonfiction. And the purpose is to demonstrate how you can account personal stories and how they've affected your life. Effective narrative goes beyond just telling the story. Please do not just give me facts of a story. You must have a purpose to it. You must have, like, how did it change you? And I will get into that in a minute. Skills and knowledge, you can read those later, but essentially it's about using your writing skills to develop scene, dialogue, conflict, to account for, describe relationships or events in your life that have affected you. Knowledge is right there. Basically, it's the creative nonfiction genre is what we're writing here, and it's building your identity and analyzing life events in the context of your identity there. Task. You'll write about two experiences in your life. So yes, it's one assignment, one personal narrative, but you have two chapters essentially. And I will talk about that in a minute, but it is just one Word document. You will not submit a PDF or linked document. A Word document is required. It needs to be an offline document, not a linked Word document, so make sure it's offline, meaning it lives on your device. I'll talk about that in a minute. What did you learn from this experience? How has this affected your growth as a person? Think of the significance of this experience as both in the past and then your life now. So something you look back on and you say, that really affected me then, but it made me who I am today, or I still think about that event in some way today. Okay, the steps. You start brainstorming for ideas. Think about some significant events in your life, stories, some trips, experiences in high school, outside of high school, sports, extracurricular activities, drama, theater, music. If you're in the band or play music in some way, that might be something you can write a narrative around. Each narrative will be connected loosely by a life theme. Just try to make that connected. In other words, if it's about travel, you have two narratives that are about travel experiences or trips. If it's about high school activities, maybe both of yours relate to different high school activities or the same activity but at different points in your life. Essentially, you tell two chapters, two narratives about your life, and they're separate events, meaning they happen at different periods of time in your life. However, they can lead into one another, but they need to be separate in some way. Example of that would be somebody who moved to the United States from Europe or Africa or wherever, Asia, and their first narrative is their time in their home country up to, say, they moved here in their junior year in high school. So they would talk about the last year of their life, or maybe not the last year, maybe the 6 months or last few months of their life in their home country, and preparing to move to the United States, and what that involved, and how that was either stressful or enjoyable, or just all the changes that involved. The plane trip over here, landing in Atlanta, because a number of my students have done this sort of narrative that are international students. And then they landed in Atlanta, and that basically ends the first narrative, and they pick up with the second narrative. Okay, plane just landed in Atlanta. I'll go to customs, get settled in my new home in Atlanta area, and that begins the chapter 2 of the second narrative. The point of that is you can have a narrative that's about the same subject, but it needs to be distinctly two different periods of time in your life with different events and different significance. Okay, you will insert one photograph of your own or offline, assuming that that's something you can use. Meaning that you don't want it copyright protected. I'll talk about that later. You can also do your own artwork. You can create an image if you want through graphic design, or you can use an actual photograph you have in your phone. or it can be an image offline. I encourage you to try to use your own pictures, though. It makes it more interesting. So try to find your own photographs or images or artwork. These images will stay with me. They're not shared, so keep that in mind. It's confidential. You'll write a brief 2 to 3 sentence caption under each picture. We'll talk about how to insert your image into Word, or you can put it at the end of the document. That's a little easier. That is also an option. Criteria for success. You'll write 2 compelling narratives that are connected by a life theme. We talked about that. Each narrative on its own must be 700 to 800 words per narrative. Okay, so don't just look at the word count. The word count will say 1,600 if maybe you're at 1,600. Let's say you reach 1,600. But if you highlight just one narrative only, that will tell you with your cursor, highlight all the text for narrative 1. And if it says 600 but your other narrative is 1,200, you have not met the guidelines. The guidelines state clearly that each narrative must be 700 to 800 words. However, this is one document, just one Word document, and you will what you'll do is you'll go to the top of the next page and put a title of the next free page after you finish the first narrative, and you'll just give the second one a title. A creative title is required. Okay. Times New Roman font, all that's there. That'll be in the rubric too. I'm about to get to the rubric. You must submit this to D2L. That's like all of my assignments as a Word document. No link documents, no PDFs. Your name just should be on the first page. Due dates are right there. You can look at those later. Let's get to the rubric. But again, I want to stress, this is one document, one Word document with 2 chapters or 2 narratives, okay? You will finish narrative 1 and you'll go to the top of the next free page, okay? And put a title and just continue writing. That would be your second narrative. Okay, moving on to the rubric. Okay, we will move on to the personal narrative rubric. All of my rubrics and my guidelines are 1 page, so you'll see that as we go through the semester. Very simple. The way I do my rubric is rubrics are based on an A standard, so I point you to the highest level of success, which is an A. And I don't worry about what's a B, C, D, or lower. So this is the high standard for the A range. So first section, and these are check boxes. So if you look closely at the check box, I will bring these to class and print these out. It's done like that so you can actually literally check it off with a pencil or pen. So that's what that is. And that's how you should use a rubric. Think of a rubric as a checklist, okay? That's essentially what it is. You would do this really not in your rough draft as much. You may look at it, but you want to look at it more before you submit your final draft, because that's when you'll receive a grade, as the rough draft is optional. But you really want to look at this before you make your final submission. Also, if you go to the writing center, you would want to look at the rubric and the guidelines. All right, moving on to the rubric. The first section, focus and topic, 25 points out of the 100. There's no relevant filter. All of this is related to one singular event or one singular experience, I should say. And there's a clear timeline. There's a theme of some sort, something you learn from it. You must have something in your narrative, in both your narratives, that points to how you learned, how you built your self-identity. It doesn't have to necessarily be learning. It could be overcoming diversity, learning skills, self-identity right there, relationships, building relationships, repairing relationships, mending relationships. Could be more about physical or mental skills you gain through the experience, anything like that. But there must be some theme, and usually that's put towards the end of the narrative. You need reactions, responses, emotions. So this is important. Please pay attention. You must go beyond reporting the facts. If you just write a narrative that reports the facts and there's no takeaway, there's no effect on you, then it's not a narrative. All you've done is just give the facts of an event. Okay, so that's not a narrative, and you will not earn probably not earn a passing score if all you do is just write a bunch of facts about an event. Okay, self-reflection goes into that. That's what I'm saying. So it's connected to what I just mentioned. You must have self-reflection. You must have emotions. You must have how this affected you. Keep thinking about that and put that in there in your narrative. Definitely towards the end, but you can put it throughout. Like, how are you affected by this? What did you learn? How did you grow? And you do that through writing it with scene, dialogue, but you also have commentary about the experience, okay, where you mention just very plainly how you grew as a person. Of course, you'll use first person in this. All right. Next section is narrative. And there, you also need a clear conclusion and resolution. Excuse me. Okay, the next section, narrative development content. This is half of your grade, 50 points. Really important that you focus on building content not just through facts, but also, again, developing that depth, connecting your narrative to how you grew. What is your response to this event? What did you learn? How did you grow as a person? How did you change? How does it affect you today? You'll have dialogues in both narrative that is required. So that all of this is required. So you can have a little bit of dialogue, or just or you can sprinkle it in throughout. You can do line by line dialogue, or you can just mix in the paragraphs. That's your choice. Line by line means one line of dialogue, another line of dialogue, and keep going. You don't have to write in paragraph form. This is not a typical paper. Okay, don't think of this as like a college paper. It's a personal narrative, creative assignment, creative nonfiction. You must describe the situation as well as the story. I will teach in class on the difference between situation and story. Situation is essentially, very briefly, I'll go into detail later, but is basically the facts of the story, like what was the weather like, what day was it, how old were you perhaps, all these important timelines, events, the year, who was with you perhaps. But the story comes from how it impacted you and others, okay? That's where the story is. How did you change? How did you feel? How did you grow as a person? What skills you learned? Okay, I mentioned the dialogue. The timeline is important. If I'm not sure where you are in your life, and you don't have to put the exact day, you can put, I was in 9th grade, or it was the end of my sophomore year in high school, or it was almost Christmas of my junior year. Well, I'll know it's probably December of your junior year. You don't have to put the exact day, but I do need to know roughly where you are in your life. That's very important. Don't forget that. You also need to put the geography of that. So where is this taking place? I need to add that to the rubric. That is required. It's not on the rubric, but I must know where this is taking place. So at least put your city and state. I don't have to have the name of your high school, but I do need to know roughly the city and state, or the county and state that you're in. If it's vacation, you don't know the city, you can just put Arizona if you're camping in Arizona, or you're skiing in Colorado, whatever. That's fine. But try to be specific as you can with the geography, the place where this took place. Technical specs are there, MLA format. I've specified what that means for this paper. The length, again, 700 to 800 words per narrative. Each must be a minimum of 700 words. I'll be checking on that for each narrative by using the cursor and looking at just that narrative, word count. Creative title for each one. So you'll start the second narrative and just put a creative title at the top of the next free page in your document. Only a few grammatical errors. That is important. Professionalism is key. It is a creative assignment, but I still want to see proper grammar and a few typos and spelling errors. And again, you must insert one picture image with a caption for each narrative. Okay, that's required for each. If you want to do at the end of each narrative, that's fine. That's a lot cleaner. If you don't want to learn about text wrapping and inserting it into the document, you can actually just wait to the end and put a picture and caption. That's fine. Either way, we'll talk about those options later. But that's required, the picture and the caption, no matter how you do it. And that's it for the personal narrative guidelines and rubric. Let me know if you have any questions by emailing me or asking me in class.